Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Main Assembly. So today I'm making this video because I had a funny idea. So rockets, I guess I'll just start off by saying this. Rockets are weird. Like, they're these weird Coke bottle shaped aircraft, I guess, that fly even though they really shouldn't, I think. I'm no big brain engineer, but when you put your center of thrust below your center of gravity, wouldn't that make it so it naturally just wants to flip over as soon as you hit the gas? Well, yeah, I think so. Unless you can make your rocket stabilize, then that's probably what you're going to end up with. Just a crash and maybe a hole in the ground. So I figured, you know what, let's try this. So I did try it. Let's take a look at what I did. So this right here is a rocket. Doesn't look like too much. Actually looks more like a bullet, to be completely honest with you. But it is nonetheless a rocket. So basically what's inside are these two jet engines, as you can see here. And these two are the main propulsion system, and these things are on a gimbal, which basically allows them to rotate and help stabilize the whole spaceship. That's a nice grass, okay. So if I move up a little bit, then we'll see that I feel like those two curves are not even, just by looking at it. Now they are. Okay, well, I'll just let this game be weird. Yeah, see, once again, they look uneven. Basically, these two jet engines right here are on a gimbal, and that allows them to rotate in basically any direction. Of course, they don't have too much room to do that with, so I only limited them to about maybe like 10-20 degrees in each direction. I forget what they're limited to, but nonetheless they work. And then so we got a few gyroscopes up here, and then these two RCS thrusters right here are just for eliminating the rotation, which can be quite annoying when you're using a stabilization system like this to help stabilize your ship, because sometimes it just doesn't work when you're spinning. And then next up, I have these two proximity sensors right here. So this one is here because it's actually doing something. It's looking down, seeing how far we are from the ground. And the second one here is just for balance. It's really just a dummy. It just sits there, does absolutely nothing. So yeah, this rocket is pretty normal in all the ways the rockets go. That is up and sideways even, and into space, although I guess there really is no space in this game. But this thing also has a little bit of a trick up its sleeve. Ever hear of Elon Musk? I'm just going to give it a quick flight, and then you guys will probably be able to figure out what's so different about this thing the moment that it happens. Anyway, here we go. At the top of its flight, it will be a little bit wobbly. I'm not quite sure why that is. I don't know if it's the stabilization not reacting quick enough or what. But as you can tell, it manages to straighten itself out pretty nicely, so that's not really a big deal. And yeah, so as you can see, also, it's actually coming back down and actually landing. That would have been a nice landing, but yeah, that was kind of a weird one. There, that was basically what a perfect flight would look like. So with a landing as good as that, and knowing how systems can be sometimes, you would think, geez, that's gotta be really complicated, right? Well, actually, it's not. Let me show you. So first up, all we have here in this big block right here is basically the whole system that controls the stability of the whole rocket. So we have our AD and SW controls, and that lets us just basically move around, so we can actually move the thing around and go places. Although very slowly, it does work. And then these other things are basically just for keeping it stable on the roll and pitch axes so it doesn't flip over mid-flight. And what this is over here is basically all for rotation. It's really just that simple. This last thing right here is basically your thrust input, and this input goes to an output into here. So what this does is it goes to this hold node, and then this holds that signal, which is a full power signal by the way, for 10 seconds, and that's basically your whole liftoff sequence right there. It just sends it straight through, no going through all this mess. And then speaking of mess, all that happens here is basically when those 10 seconds are up, it'll switch this system here, which will basically set the thrust to about 0.45, basically 45%. And basically what that allows for is for the rocket to slowly float back down to Earth at a pretty reasonable rate, so it doesn't take forever. And then after the ground is in sight, then we actually start to go off this distance sensor, which gradually applies this value of thrust. And basically what this does is it starts to slow down the ship little by little until it gets closer and closer to the ground. And when we get close enough to the ground, and we pass whatever this is, probably a few feet above the ground, then it turns on the down to earth system, which will turn on the thrust even more while it's at that threshold. And then basically it'll basically activate this section right here, which all it does is basically increases the thrust a little bit more so that it slows down a lot more as it gets closer and closer to the ground. And this last part here is basically just a kill switch. So when it gets close enough to the ground, it'll kill all power going to it, which is what this switch is for actually. So when this input B becomes great enough, then it'll actually cut the power from here and it'll switch it to here, but because there's nothing connected, nothing happens. So that's basically a quick tour on how this works. And now hopefully we'll be able to see another successful flight. So if I can place this thing right about here, facing that way, hopefully I can fly a little bit down there. So all I have to do is press Control and W, and then that should basically allow it to fly around. And as you can see, it's kind of moving the thruster around a little bit when I press all the directional keys, which means that it's working. So yeah, let's take off and head over there-ish. Obviously this thing does not lean too much, but I mean, it leans enough that it goes somewhere. As you can tell, we didn't really go anywhere. So now I'm actually rotating it, so I'm trying to land right about where the point is. That looks like it's not going to happen, but that's okay. So we're coming in for a landing, and let's see how this looks. Okay, that was actually good. It's basically what happens when there's a failed landing. For whatever reason it can happen. It can happen for a bunch of reasons, but mostly it's because the rocket comes in a little bit too slow, and then it doesn't get enough speed in order to break through to that threshold where it cuts all power, or reduces the power or something like that. So now we're basically stuck in this hovering state, which I guess is also kind of cool because I've never really hovered this thing. At least I've never been patient enough to let it hover by itself. So yeah, I guess I'm just gonna fast forward this. As if that wasn't weird enough, let's actually try and go for another perfect landing, see if we can't do it in one shot. So here we go. And that, my friends, was a perfect landing. Pretty much. I mean, pretty level terrain, I think, so that definitely helps out a lot. But speaking of helping out a lot, be sure to leave a like on this video if you liked it. And as always, if you want to see more of this kind of content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, be sure to leave them down in the comments down below. And until next time, goodbye.